What is up, guys, and welcome back to OWL by the Numbers, your one-stop spot for all things Fantasy Overwatch League. I am your host, Tumblery Drunk, and tonight on episode 32, we're going to recap last week's Fantasy League games as we were in the second week of the Overwatch League playoffs. We'll reflect on our years in fantasy as we wrap things up for the season, and of course, we'll, talk about, some of our experience that we had this year and look ahead at what we could be seeing come 2020 in regards to Fantasy OWL. But before we can jump into the agenda for tonight and introduce you to one of my co-hosts, let me just quickly take a moment to thank everyone who is joining us tonight on Twitch for our live show, and of course thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host, Ed. We have kind of reached the end of the road, at least for the 2019 Fantasy OWL season. We have, at this point, one more event coming up, that being none other than the Grand Finals. We'll have details on Fantasy OWL offerings towards the end of the show. But I know there's been a lot of stuff going on. Of course, playoffs are in full swing. The Shock have basically been 4-0ing their way to the Grand Finals through the lower bracket. So we have that inevitable Shock Titans finals, which I'm really excited for. But how has the past week been treating you?
It's been good. We had some... I want to say we had good Overwatch, but we kind of didn't. Like, it was a lot of blah games. A lot of 4-0s, a lot of just meh games. There was one good matchup, and that was Vancouver versus New York. The rest were all 100% just crap matches, and everything else was a 4-0. So you had that, but football's on. I'm getting ready to go on vacation this weekend. No, I am not going to the Grand Finals or anything like that, even though that's the following weekend. But I'm going to DC this weekend so I can go see a GD Panda. I want to see a panda. Real bad. I know it sounds stupid, but I just want to see a panda.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to DC this weekend, and it's starting to get comfortable out. Like, we don't have like 90 in humidity and all that stuff. Hearthstone released a new PvE patch today, which has been a lot of fun. Didn't play much Classic, though. It's one thing I did not do a lot of. I don't know. How's your week been?
It's been pretty good. Work's been pretty busy. I've been playing a lot of Diablo 3, so I was doing a lot of progression on my Whirlwind Barbarian. But, football's here. Like, of course, we got our Fantasy Football League with some of the other podcasters out there, and I'm 2-0 there, so that's a pretty good start. Happy with that. Even with my auto-drafted team through my player rankings, which was interesting. We'll see how that fares out in the grander scheme of things. But across the board, it's been a pretty good week. I was a little saddened that my New York tip over Titans didn't come to fruition, but you know what? If that was the case, things might have been a little bit different in a lower bracket, and maybe the Shock wouldn't have 4-0'd literally everyone. But you know what? I'm just happy that when all was said and done, it did come down to the top 3 teams vying it out for those final spots to make it to Philadelphia this year, and I'm pretty happy for that. And now we basically are waiting to see like what all the contract situations are to be. Who's gonna get re-upped?
Mm-hmm.
Who's gonna stay? Who's gonna go? But outside of that, we actually got word that Chicago's getting a Call of Duty League
Boo.
game, so there's that. And I know they picked up Hex from Optic Gateman, which I'm pretty happy about, so that's nice to see. So I at least like the people that they brought on for the franchise. It's just unfortunate that that's not something that we follow. So it's hard for me to be excited, but I'm at least glad that Midwest has some representation now outside of freaking Toronto. So take that for what it is, but we're still holding out for that Overwatch League team in the future for Chicago. But it's gonna be a while before that happens. It's not gonna happen in 2020 since it's not added any teams, but 2021.
It could happen.
It should happen.
And the thing that sucks is that it's NRG that is opening the Chicago team. So it's not like it's a Chicago-based organization that doesn't have like an Overwatch League team.
Right.
Because NRG does have an Overwatch League team. So it's not like, oh, well, we have NRG there in Chicago. They have the Call of Duty team. Maybe they get... Nope, they got one. Shit. And like they'll probably throw a shape fit about like another organization putting a Blizzard, like, I don't know. Maybe they relocate the San Francisco Shock.
I don't know if that's the case, because like it's not uncommon for these investors with these orgs to kind of be scattered, because we've seen that with other geolocations as well. But we'll see how that exactly pans out. But I'm at least happy with the starting pieces that we do have.
Mhm.
But we're not here to talk about COD. We're here to talk about Fantasy OWL. So last week, as we mentioned, there was a little bit of fantasy going on, both in pick'ems as well as daily fantasy. So, what was like the landscape for you this past week in regards to Fantasy OWL?
Well, the landscape this week was kind of
Barren.
the league of slim pickings. And it's just like the nature of the format. So like Thursday you got to pick from Atlanta, Spark, Gladiator, Shock. Okay, fine and dandy.
Mm-hmm.
Friday you got to pick from one match, New York Titans. Saturday you just got to pick from Spark, Shock. Sunday you just got to pick from Shock, New York. So it's not like there was a lot of diversity.
Did they actually update each day? I didn't check back after the first day because I figured that was going to be it.
They did. Well, I didn't do Sunday.
Okay.
But I did Saturday.
Okay.
And 4 of us were in it. 5 of us were in it. And, like, we all had just one-player deviations from everything else. Like, I'm looking now, and it was like, all right, you either took Bazzi or you took Striker. That was really the only deviation anyone took. So, but yeah, Thursday was a little bit different because you did have some diversity. Just see what went on Thursday. I think I want to say I took third.
Yeah, you were third. Behind me.
Yeah. Ooh. Let's see, who did I even pick Thursday?
Well, I know on Thursday I started Sinatra with Godspeed for DPS, Golden Boy Choi and Gator, and then Violet and Bebe for my support.
Oh, see, I did Hydration and Gods, Golden Boy, Gator, Shaz, and Bebe. So, whatever.
So a
We all
couple
lost
of variations there.
Oh yeah, the guy who won had Surefour and Rhea and Shaz. So that's actually a pretty different lineup than what you had.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was fun to see it. Not many people did it this week. I don't think it was advertised all that much.
There was like 9 people on Thursday, which was the day that we had more options. I know, like, the person that finished in first for that week finished with like 1436. I was about 22 and a half points over what I finished at. But man, Godspeed, with the Sparks running the lower bracket, just was posting some absolutely ridiculous numbers. On Thursday, he posted 362.59 points, which ended up being 26% of my points for that specific contest. The only one in my lineup that scored 300, and he might have been one of the few players to actually post 300 for that day as well. So, it's
He was the only one.
It's interesting that, like, the non-Doomfist player was the one doing so much of the cleanup in this case.
Yeah, like, I'm looking at it, and he, outside Bebe, he scored 100 points more than everyone else.
That is ridiculous.
And Bebe had 284 points to his 362. So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Godspeed did very well, and to kind of bring this around, this wasn't a 4-0.
Right.
Like, this wasn't like an oh my god type of moment. This is they 4-0'd and he dropped 362 points. So Godsby went off like we haven't seen really at all this season. It was nice to see actually because I'm just looking at Friday to see what people did because like they didn't do that much better on Friday.
I know. Last week I rolled with Godspeed, and he was one of the top earners on DPS that week too. So it's a string of performances that we saw from him.
Yeah. So like I'm looking at Friday's matchup, and Friday's matchup was a 4-3, and Twilight is the number one point getter at 300.
That is
So,
crazy that someone
like-
can score more in 4 maps than a flex support in 7.
So yeah, he that kind of put into perspective what he actually did.
Mm-hmm.
It was insane, just beyond insane. So good for Godspeed, get that nice dominant performance in before you get 4-0'd. Wah wah.
Yeah, their luck eventually ran up, but you know what? Spark did a lot better than a lot of people were expected them to. So I was happy to see what they did there. In regards to pick'ems this week, there were 5 matches. I went 4-1. The only one I got wrong was the Excelsior Titans game, which I knew would be close, but I was favoring Excelsior. But I have to say the overall quality of that match greatly surpassed my expectations, like even to the higher extent that I had it at. But I was really happy to see, you kind of were worried about New York with their off-kilter strats, which honestly didn't play a huge role throughout that series. It was more a mirror match, and it was still that close, so that was a pleasant surprise that we got to see there. But pick'ems across the board have been going pretty good. I haven't looked at the updated standings yet, so I don't know if I've made any crowns on that front. But, with the way that the playoffs have been, I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to move up, because who knows if a lot of people are even still doing it at this point, just because it is the playoffs, so you never know. You're muted.
Dang it. No, I win 5-0 in this one. I picked them all right. I switched off of. I know during Heroes Never Die last week, or this show last week, I picked Atlanta to win, but I switched it over to the Spark. But got the rest right. Right now, at least for HighNoon.gg, because the pick'em leaders aren't like finalized. Right now, I have a 1-game lead on you. So I'm in 6th place, and you're in 8th place. So I have 219, you have 218.
Okay.
So
that one's close, just like a lot of our other leagues that you
yeah,
and I have.
it's weird how me and you are very close
neck.
when it comes to all of this.
It's honestly surreal. So let's go ahead and reflect on basically our year in review. So obviously we've had a couple of different formats. We've had a High Noon Fantasy, so we already kind of touched up on how we're doing in pick'ems. So you and I were in a number of different standard leagues. We also had an expert league that we were in together for part of the Foul Play League, which record-wise was definitely my worst one, but I considering how terrible I started in that one, I finished with a 12-8 record, which I was happy with, because it was definitely a rough start out of the gate for me for almost the first stage, basically. I felt like the Valiant trying to play catch-up at that point. But in regards to overall, let's see, I'm trying to see how many leagues I was in. We had the Overwatch League Network Host League that we did. We had the Podcasters Fantasy Showdown, so that was the one where Ramses and I had co-led a team, and then you and Bob had co-led a team. We had the Owl Network Discord League that we were both in. Then it was also in ones for Junkertown FM, which is another variety Overwatch podcast. We had the Foul Play Experts League, and then I was in another random one I found on I think on the Reddit or in another Discord, but it didn't play throughout the entirety of the season. They had some issues at the start of the year, so there were 3 weeks that didn't actually get translated, so that one only had 17 games. But in regards to overall record for this season, I went 84-31, which was a 73% win rate. And out of those leagues, Ed, I know you and I both tied in our network league for the host league, and that was out of 8 players. Ramses and I tied for first with the Broverwatch in the Podcasters Vanity Showdown, so that had 10 different teams. I got first in the Discord League, first in Junkertown FM. That was a tie with like 3 other people, so we had 4 people that finished 14-6 in that league. Like, that was a rough one. And then I think those were like all the first place finishes I had. So like more than half of them I did pretty good, so I was happy with that. But no 500 records, anything like that, even despite slow starts in the Experts League. So all in all, pretty happy with what I did. But you know, it's worth noting, like, we do have to factor in some of the issues that we did have with, you know, the API, but we'll brush up on more on that in a little bit. But how did you fare kind of like throughout the season in your various leagues here?
All right, so the league where me and the Overwatch League, OWLN League, where me and Bob had a team, that was hands down our worst team. My worst league, I think we went 10-10. I want to say that was a struggle from the get-go. We had no flex supports.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't pick any flex supports, and that destroyed us. We get Gurry and
turns
Zachary.
out main supports aren't the best at fantasy.
Yeah, so that was a bad one. I'll give it that. The rest of the leagues I did very good at.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you said, me and you tied for first in the Overwatch League network host league. In our Discord league, you took first, I took second. I lost to you by 1 game. And then in the Foul Play Experts League, I came in first place. And I went 18-2 in that one.
Nice.
So I won by 3 games in that one. So, you know, I had a very successful, you know, standard Overwatch League season, you know,
Mm-hmm.
first place in 50% of my leagues. So, you know, I consider it a success, but like you said, there were a few issues.
Yes.
A few being, you know, an understatement. We'll go with an understatement.
Yeah, all in all, it was definitely a process. It was kind of unfortunate because, one, like, we know, like, everyone at, we know Matt is basically working alone with High Noon Fantasy, and, you know, when it comes to the Overwatch League API, there were just times when we just wouldn't get scores. So that would directly translate to not getting points in fantasy, and, you know, it's worth noting that definitely had an impact in regards to people staying for the longevity of the season. You know, it discouraged a lot of people, and there were definitely moments where you could tell, you know, because I know it kind of like impacted the normal leagues. There were also some issues with Unlimited not updating at times, and you could definitely tell, like, in Stage 4, like, how many people were playing. Like, I know even in the bigger leagues, like ours or like the HighNoon.gg one, there were maybe like 8 to 12 players that were submitting like on a weekly basis, even in Stage 4. So it seemed like, I don't know like when exactly in the season that the interest started to wane a bit, but it seemed like at least in the second half we did see some major drop off. But it was a struggle, primarily just trying to figure out, okay, what is the best way to go about dealing with issues should they arise. And, you know, it took a little bit of time, but, you know, we did finally get there. You know, we figured out, you know, what system we were to use. The community basically voted on how they were going to go about fixing the issue. But it did take a little bit of time, just patching through the scores on a week-to-week basis and getting everything updated. But, you know, we got to that point, which is the important thing. But, you know, like, it's crazy to think how we basically went from having initially, like, we only had pick'ems, we only had Winston's Lab to Barrow basically getting signed by Toronto Defiant to Winston's Lab just kind of becoming stagnant. I don't know how else to say it. Like, they weren't updated. Like, they still held leagues, but I honestly don't know anyone that played throughout the entirety of the season on Winston's Lab, or if it even updated with Barrow gone from that entire project. But, you know, we at least saw the expansion, so, you know, we got unlimited drafts, we got pick'ems, you know, we had raw scoring leagues, we had normal leagues with best of scores, we had, you know, the arrival of daily fantasy OWL. So all in all, we basically went from just one format to suddenly having 4 at this point, which was great to see. So I was really happy to see how we evolved from year to year, which makes, you know, the thoughts of the future pretty exciting. But, you know, we're still waiting for that official Overwatch League app to come out for Fantasy, or just run through the website, or run through it like someone like Yahoo or ESPN, whatever it's gonna be. But, you know, could be in the pipelines, but we don't have any, like, concrete information on that, which is kind of killer. But I'm so glad that the community has been the ones tackling these issues, and they're at the forefront, so we at least have something to talk about. It gives us a platform to play, it gives us something to talk about week after week throughout the season, outside of just the games in itself, and plus, you know, having the competitiveness, not only between co-hosts, but also the other fantasy OWL podcast, Foul Play, is definitely probably the most exciting aspect of it. Because one, I'm pretty confident to say that we won.
Well, that's a given. I mean, let's be real. You had you and me, and we won. Not to mention that they switched hosts mid-season.
Yeah, they abandoned ship when they realized, oh crap, we're not going to win.
Exactly. So, you know, that happened. But like you said, like it was a season of a lot of ups and downs.
It's kind of like the Dynasty season.
Not that rocky. Not that rocky. But like you would think that they'll have plenty of time to work on some of the bugs. But like the big bug and the elephant in the room is the API. Will Blizzard address it, or will they not? And this will never have like a legit fantasy situation if we don't get a constant API. Now, this would all be alleviated if they actually made a fantasy like site of their own, like integrated into the Overwatch League site, which I think they should do, which it'd be stupid of them not to. Because, I mean, outside of like coding and maintaining the website, what does it cost them? It costs them nothing outside of maintaining the website, which is something that the benefits 100%, you know, outweigh the costs. You know, fantasy sports has saved other sports. Football wouldn't be where it's at right now without fantasy football. You know, even baseball, basketball, both all benefits. So I don't think anybody's denying the benefit of fantasy sports. They just need to get on board. And I think they're slowly, there's been hints, there's been inklings and whatnot about it. So I think we're going to get there.
Yeah, because, like, even this year, like, we saw the introduction of the OWL picks as a Twitch extension, which, you know, looking at, like, 2020, I don't know how exactly that's going to work, just with how the schedule is next year, since the start times are, like, all over the map. But it really was kind of just, like, a first step into, like, a version of official pick'ems or just, like, a trivia type system. So it kind of, like, opened the door. It's just a matter of One, if they can have a successful launch, because they had to disable it the first day because it didn't work. And then, like, I thought it was interesting, like, even in the playoffs, I felt like it's just, you were constantly trying to play catch-up with the extension, because it didn't always update right off the bat, but it has gotten better as the playoffs have, gone further in. But I'm really curious to see where exactly they're going to take that, and how they're going to expand on it. But you know what? It was another way to earn OWL tokens. I just wish that there was more to the pick'ems aspect through OWL. But maybe 2020 will be the route.
Yeah, but you just don't know. I had high hopes when they first announced it, and it was just not even. It didn't even, get to the first rung at meeting what I expected it to be. So,
Right.
like, it was almost non-existent to me. Like, okay, you need to get 10 right to get 25 tokens. I don't care. Like, at
Which you
that
could
point,
basically, like, do in, like, the week, basically. Like,
yeah, you're like,
guaranteed.
if you remember to do this, you could get 25 Overwatch League tokens this week. Yeah, you've already lost me. I'm out. Like, half the time I'd forget about it. It's just this little button on the side of the Twitch stream. Like, they don't push it, they don't advertise. Like, it was a non-existent thing. And I hope they don't take that as, like, this is what we want to do. And we want to use this to test, like, what we want to do in the future. Or, like, gauge interest in it. So, it was a failure. In my mind, it was a failure. But they should keep trying. Just don't do the same thing.
Right. So again, we also had daily fantasy options. This one through Fantasy OWL, which we had basically beta tested before the official launch. Stage 4, they were full go. And like you and I definitely enjoy the daily format. I mean, out of everything, I enjoyed daily more than the other 4 options that we got. Just because, like, you have a lot more options, and you're not constricted as much as what you can do, what you can't do, like you would in a normal league. So, that's why I gravitated a lot more towards the daily and also the unlimited drafts through highnoon.gg. Now, I kind of, like, went through how I fared in Stage 4, and, Stage 4 was boom or bust. For fantasy. I'm not gonna say what my average score was because it wasn't that great. But I went through and I like counted up like, okay, how many like first place finishes did I get? And then I excluded like any contest that had like 4 or less, because like obviously you have a higher probability of winning, and like I finished in first place like 7 times, not including like our private contests and things like that. But in regards to like top performances this stage, I know in the regular season, so this was on Thursday for Stage 4 Week 3, my high score was 1134.61, but my overall record was 1497.32, which was during the playoffs, which was on Saturday of the first week of the playoffs. But, I posted 50,000 points, which excluded duplicate lineups throughout the stage. Not the best average, but, there were some weeks where I posted below 500 points because Dynasty would bench someone, or someone just wouldn't play at all, or Atlanta would change their off-tank without posting anything, and you'd be screwed because you can't fix it. Or, you would just have someone play half the maps, and then you'd only post like 500, 600, and that definitely impacts leads. So it's like, I had great weeks, I had terrible weeks, and I had a lot that were just kind of middle in. But across the board, I really enjoyed the daily aspect. Shaz throughout the stage was an absolute monster. Godsby, as of late, has definitely been probably the top performer, which was great to see, because it's a player that you just wouldn't expect, because he hadn't been performing like that throughout the rest of the year. But all in all, even posting like 1,000 points in daily on any week was a very good week. You had a very decent probability of winning for that week, or just getting like a top 3 finish, or whatever it was for like the XP breakdown or earning coins or whatever through the gamification with daily fantasy. But across the board, I have to say I was really happy with how things ran. I really enjoyed kind of like the game within the game with leveling up, and watching videos to get coins, being able to do private contests, earning coins that way. And I have to say, like, the whole like custom owls that they did for each teams, still like it was one of the coolest things, because it was so easy to distinguish which owl was for which team, and it was unique to them, which I thought was very important. Not only were they the only daily offering, but they had these unique avatars that really fit with the whole branding of them as well.
Yeah, no, it was God, I loved it. I would probably still do a standard league with like co-hosts and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But daily is where it's at with this league. Being able to have a different lineup every day makes the games more interesting to watch. Like certain characters, certain players just became all-stars for you. Like you said, Shaz. Shaz was like probably the best support overall for the whole season, really.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely for season 4. And the site worked very well. Like, there are little things here and there that could be tweaked, and I think a lot of those are just like cosmetic changes. And I know, talking with Fowl, that he has a lot of big ideas that he's going to try and implement here. He is, again, sound like a broken record, handicapped a little based because of the API.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, he can't actually do money leagues because the API, you can't trust it. And if you can't trust the API, you can't do money leagues. You just can't. So, like, I know he has big ideas, and I know he's been in contact with people from Blizzard. I don't know about what, but he said he has talked to them, and hopefully, things get worked out, and we can start moving forward. But the Fantasy OWL definitely became my go-to fantasy Overwatch League site. I just love like the joining different tournaments. We could set up tournaments. Me and you could do our stupid. Okay, I know.
80 points.
Yeah, like 80 points instead of 100. Good luck. Type of situation.
Post better scores in our main league.
Yep. And then, like, you're trying to search for those diamonds in the roughs, or taking those risks, or stuff like that. That really kind of gives you more thought into the games than, let's say, for Unlimited. It's just like, okay, these guys will probably do well. We'll just start the majority of these players, and then set and forget for the entire week. This is more like, okay, this is what they're going to do. Well, depending on what they do Thursday, what are they going to do Saturday, and so on and so forth. Now, this will all change once we go down to just Saturdays and Sundays for next season. Like, we'll have less, like, oh, this person was benched on Thursday, I won't start them on Sunday, like, type of situations. But yeah, daily fantasy was so much fun this year. I look forward to it so much.
Yeah, so in regards to 2020, there's definitely like things that we're hoping to see in regards to fantasy OWL options, whether it's options for commissioners, just trying to like better flesh out like trade-in was probably a big thing. So in regards to like bucket list things that we would like to see added for 2020, I know for me, I would love being able to have more customizable scoring options, to differentiate values for certain things. an option for like three-way trades would be a welcome thing, because like the trading options right now were pretty bland, and it was hard to kind of like realize when you got an offer, because there weren't any sort of like notifications or things like that. So it's a pretty easy like quality of life change that HighNoon.gg should definitely look to incorporate. Is there like anything major though, feature wise, that you would like to see being incorporated into some of these formats for 2020?
Stats between both. This is one thing that they were both severely lacking is past statistics. Now, HighNoon.gg had this sort of. It wasn't. The thing was, it wasn't always updated. It wasn't always correct. But like, I want to see what they easily see. Now, there were ways on Foul Fantasy OWL and on High Noon to do it, but it was not easy to get to. It needs to be implemented more of a. This is like what they scored last week. This is what their 3-week average is, or something of that nature.
And also, how many maps they played was another important thing too.
Because that's the most important thing when it comes to fantasy is stats. You go off stats. You don't go off. You can never go on fantasy off pure gut feeling. Because you got to use your gut a little, but you can't go pure gut on everything. It's never going to go well. So, more stats. That's all I want is just more stats, more access to stats. Plain and simple. You give me that, I'm a happy camper.
Absolutely.
After that, more social functions. More chat, like, I guess this is just very wishful thinking, but if you had like a mobile app for HighNoon.gg or Fantasy Owl, and you would have a message board on there that you could chit chat with people, or when you get trades, you get notifications on your phone, be like, this person's offered you a trade, so on and so forth,
or even like scoring updates after maps, would be a big thing, because we have like stat trackers and things like that, with Yahoo Fantasy Football. So like we know every time there's a score in play, like it'll tell you like who threw for what, like how long the rush was, or reception, distance of field goal, all of that good stuff. Because like right now you're basically, you can like look back like let's say 5 to 10 minutes after a map was played, and then you can see what the total was, and you get the sets that way. But you never get something like in the moment, but that's also partially just how things are calculated too. Like it takes
like a game tracker. Like a game tracker, I think is kind of what you're trying to get at. Is like you could have your team up, and it'll have like a running tally of kills, damage done, now, healing done.
I will say with scheduling, unlike NFL, like we're not always going to have games that overlap at the same time. I'll have to do a like deeper dive into the schedule. I know there are instances where that does happen, across 2 different continents, but it's not like going to be an everyday thing. So I don't think that's going to be as requested. But just getting a breakdown after each map, even if it's through notifications, would be nice to see.
Yeah, and this is more HighNoon.gg. Less Fantasy OWL, because we don't have transactions. Fantasy OWL. I want a transaction summary. So like every Tuesday morning, I think it is when ad drops were able to occur. But you had no idea who got added, who got dropped.
Right.
A simple ad drop. Like that would have been huge, instead of like scrolling through and be like, okay, was this person on a team yesterday? Was this person not on the list yesterday? But yeah, like, catch it in chats, like kind of push notifications would work too. But that would all revolve around getting a phone app. And I have zero idea how complicated that could get, but I can only imagine.
Yeah, because even like when you look at like fantasy football with the waiver wires, it tells you like who gets added, who gets dropped, Like there's even like percentages or like how many users picked up this player or dropped this player in the week, so you can see like who's getting moved the most in either direction. But yeah, there was no clear cut way to know who was getting dropped, and it definitely made playing the waiver wire a lot harder in that sense, just because you didn't know who was going to be readily available to pick up, even if someone did have like a boom performance. So you couldn't really react as well just because of that, because you were pretty much kept in the dark on that front. Now, in regards to 2020, like one of the things that makes me kind of nervous is the schedule changes that we have going on, because all of the games are going to move to Saturday and Sunday. So now the big question becomes, how are things going to get broken up? Like, are they going to do it where you have blocks of games for Saturday and Sunday, where, say, like, you limit it to, like, 4 or 5 games for that day, and then, like, split it into 2 groups? Are they just going to compile everything together? And then you also have to factor in the start times, because it is going to be global. There's home and away games on multiple different continents at this point, so they have to factor that in. Like, do they just do, like, okay, we're gonna do... Are they gonna split it based on the host and break it up that way for the day? Like, there's so many different ways that they can do that, but I don't think that they can just be like, okay, we're just gonna throw all of the Saturday games together, all of the Sunday games together. I feel like that would be a little bit too much to take in, especially when you factor in how early some of the matches start, because the lineups would lock due to the first game starting that much earlier in the day.
Yeah, it's going to be wonky to see what they do in regards to the, okay, well, some of these games will start at 3 a.m. our time, and the breakdown that comes with that. It will be interesting to see once we actually like take the time to sit down and go over the schedule and be like, okay, this is where they can cut it off, because I don't think they can do like one big one.
Right.
I think that would, then there's 0 point in daily. If you do that, there's 0 point in daily fantasy, because you could just do a standard league and it'd be the exact same thing. So yeah, I they'll break it up. I don't know how they will, but they will for sure.
Yeah, to me it makes most sense to just break it up based on the host, since they're going to be hosted in 2 different areas. So outside of that, obviously with 2020, in regards to the format for the season, we no longer have stages. So here's another thing, like for like raw scoring leagues, for normal leagues, unlimited draft, things like that. As a commissioner, I want to have the option to either do a full season or have the option to do a half season. So obviously, the key thing here is that there is an all-star break that happens mid-season. Obviously, that is a clear-cut point to say, okay, we have a first half and a second half, because we've already seen, like, not everyone is going to play throughout the entirety of the season. You're much more likely to have someone play half of a season, and then, if they're still enjoying it, they can play the second half. So an option to split leagues using, different halves would be absolutely fantastic. And for me, like, that makes the most sense. So you have the option to either split it or do a full season. Outside of that, I don't really know what other way they could, like, try to break it down, because I don't feel like saying, like, okay, like, we're gonna run a league for 5 or 6 weeks would make any sense when there's no stages,
Well, the other thing is with this new schedule, is it the death of standard? Because so few teams will be playing each week. It's impossible to do like a standard draft. You'd have to have like a 20-person roster almost at that point, because like, think of it as like a homestand. Like, I don't know if you can do standard with all of this.
I'm trying to see, like, get a head count of, like, how many teams are playing each week. Okay, so I'm gonna spit out, like, the week week 1, so which will be February 8th and 9th. We got Paris, Toronto, New York, London. So that's 4. Boston is also in there. So that's 5 from the Atlantic North. Then you have Vancouver, Gladiators, Fuel, Valiant, and Shock. So there's 10 for that week. So I don't know if that's going to be the average, but I would imagine it's probably going to be anywhere from like 8 to maybe 12 on the highest end, if that's even the case.
Yeah, and then you have what? So you have 10 teams, and then you have 10, let's say you have 10 teams in your fantasy league. You don't have enough players. Truly.
That's gonna be rough.
Because like, I mean, you can't field a roster every week. Like, you'll never be able to really...
The only thing I can think of is if they change what the lineup consists of in regards to needing X of this, role, X of this role, X of this role,
Yeah.
But then again, you'd have such constricted rosters that would feel kind of weird too.
It wouldn't be that fun, honestly. Like, because if you look at it, like, let's say there's 10 each week. Let's say on average there's 10. Let's go back to the last, like, homestand. All right. There was 10 teams that one, but like, let's look at stage 2 when the first homestand happened in Dallas. There's 1, 2. I think there's. I'm looking here real quick. There's 10 teams. No, 8 teams. 8 teams that time, and you couldn't field the roster with a 10-team league. Mm-hmm. It's just not fun. Now imagine that every week. I don't know if a standard league is viable.
Yeah, by the looks of it, just looking at my spreadsheet, it seems like it's 8 to 10.
Yeah, I don't think that's viable, unless they get real creative with scoring. Mm-hmm. And kind of do it not weekly, mm-hmm. but 2 weeks. So, like, you would combine 2 weeks worth of games.
That would make sense because when you look at it, you basically have 2 different divisions that are serving as hosts for the week. So, like, in week 1, you have the Atlantic North hosting and the Pacific West. In week 2, you have the Atlantic South
do
and
something
Pacific
like
East.
That. Yeah. You could do something like that, and I'm sure there are ways to game the system that way. But that would probably be the only way you could go about it. Mm-hmm. Which sucks. But then, that would lean us more towards the fantasy and unlimited drafts, right, which I'm not completely against. Like, I love those. So, not completely completely against no standard leagues. But, yeah, it would definitely put a hamper on all of that.
I would really hate to see hamper on that, just because, like, I really do like drafting. Obviously, drafting in fantasy is a huge thing. Kind of like looking back at the start of the season and where we thought players would be, who would be playing, how teams were drafted. It was a lot of gray area, and that definitely reflected in performances, in the normal leagues. On HighNoon.gg, which is pretty interesting. So, really, it honestly felt like, we came in, we thought we had a good idea or a good grasp of how things were going to pan out, and then we had 3-3, and then it's just like, there was definitely, like, a moment of panic where we're like, oh crap, which DPS are playing Zarya? And then it's just being a free-for-all and hoping that you made the right choice. And
Yep.
then having that carry you for 3/4 of the season, and then
It's why I went like it's why I went 18-2 is because I picked up Sinatra day one,
hmm
and Sinatra hard carry.
yeah,
So
so it worked out.
it worked out, and that's that crappy. Like that's another thing. Like that I'm not the biggest fan of standard is like standard is fine for like NBA, baseball, football because you know what you're getting into going into it. Like you go into football and you know halfway through the season they're not going to outlaw rushing the ball.
Well, you also have an understanding of whether or not someone is going to play, which is
You
another
do,
huge thing.
but like imagine it this way: like we had 3-3 where Zarya's were God, and you had these Zarya players. Well, in video games, you have the meta where a balance change basically makes Zarya non-existent, and the only comparable thing is in like football. If they basically came in and were like, okay, you can't have running backs on the field anymore. Like it's kind of like that. Like you go through this using one character who's been so dominant, has been your best fantasy scorer, and then the league's like, no more.
Or it's
We're
just
changing
like,
things. You can't do this. And then it's just like, well, shit, what do I do? And that's where standard comes into like really screw you. And it's not like that in any other league. So like I'm really talking myself out of doing standard leagues.
it would
like,
also
like
kind of be like, like whenever there's like a 20-point lead in the game, and whoever's trailing is going to only be passing. If you're just like, you know what, we're just going to negate all the yardage from that point. Any garbage time touchdown.
Garbage time touchdowns count. I love garbage time. Like, we called that, and you know what? I think this is the 7th week in a row I've mentioned it. It's the Blake Bortles effect.
Mm-hmm.
Because when Blake Bortles was a top 3 fantasy quarterback, it was because their team was behind every week, and he would just chuck it downfield. That is what happens. I'll take garbage time.
Well, you know who won't be chucking it down the field? Eli, because he got benched.
You know who else who won't? Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, that too.
Or Drew Brees.
For 6 weeks.
Maybe more.
Yeah,
who knows?
maybe more. It's a rough stretch for QBs out there.
Oh, Kesha in chat. Remember DeFran? Me neither. Oh, R.I.P. All those people who
I remember him
drafted
being
DeFran.
drunk on stage for.
Oh my god. That is definitely. They'll never show that clip again because he admitted to being drunk on stage. But that was a thing of beauty.
It was. So I guess the biggest question at the end of the day for fantasy in 2020 is, will we get an official platform from the Overwatch League? Now, here's the problem. Like, we don't have any clear-cut sign that we're going to have an official one. We've seen things that kind of hint at it, because we've known they've been eyeing it since the start of the league, but we haven't ever had a time frame. But knowing that they've been reaching out to creators out there is promising. I just don't know if it will come in 2020, and a lot of that just boils down to the fact that you look at the steps that they're taking for the next season. Obviously, a lot of the focus is on the teams trying to find venues. You have other, investors branching out into starting up franchises with the other Activision Blizzard League. You have a lot of teams. You have the whole scheduling conflicts, how people are going to travel, and all of that. It's a huge undertaking for 2020. So I don't think we're going to see an official platform through the Overwatch League next year. So I would really hope that come Season 3, that will be when we'll get the green light. a full-fledged league through OWL at that point. But I'm not expecting it to happen in 2020. I'm thinking 2021.
I am going to be optimistic. And I think we get some form of it. Whether it's daily or not, I think we get some form of it. It may not be exactly what we imagine. It may be a variation, but I think they give us something. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Like, even if it's just pick'ems, I would be fine with that as a start, or daily. But who knows? Like, there's options out there. Maybe they'll go to someone like Foul or to Matt. You know, rack their brains a little bit, see what's worked, what hasn't worked. But at the end of the day, we need working stats in order for it to all come together.
Yeah, and they also need to, I mean, first and foremost, they need to get their stats on lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the first thing you need to do. So, get that done, and which shouldn't be that hard because the stats are still there. It's just your programming that is screwing up. So, get that on lockdown and then do some form of platform.
So with that being said, guys, it is worth noting, this is going to be our final episode for this year. You know, it's the end of the fantasy season, except for the grand finals. So just as an update, you know, the grand finals are, of course, not this week, but next week. And hold on, I gotta find the tweet that Fowl had sent me earlier today. Well, actually, it wasn't that long ago, because he gave me the update. Okay, let me pull it up real quick. And then I'll let you guys know what the deal is. So, you know, grand finals are on September 29th, which is a Sunday. Start at 2 p.m. Of course, you got the Zed pre-show at 1:30 Central Time, so be sure to tune in for that. Hopefully there will be less stumbling on stage.
See, here's the thing about and I'll bring this up again tomorrow, is they need to get a performer whose songs don't rely on other people also being there. Like, Zed is a great performer.
That's why
but
he needs to do the Zelda remix that
Yeah,
I posted
but,
in
like,
the Discord.
You know, like, Zed has these popular songs with Ariana Grande, Katy Perry, you know, they're not going to be there. DJ Khaled has all these songs, but he has 40 different people on each song. And when none of them are there, it's going to be like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
I want someone else.
Yeah. So, Fowl said that, just as a heads up, on Friday, there are going to be exclusive contests live for the Grand Finals. We'll have the same 2-2-2 lock options, but you're going to have the ability to power up one player of your choosing for double the points. So that's going to be the way that they close out the series. They are going to be doing physical prizes for that as well, which they are going to announce at a later date. So I'm sure he's going to post all that info probably on the Discord, and probably also on Twitter, but Discord's probably going to be the primary spot to find all of the info on that. So that will be the final contest for the year for Daily Fantasy OWL, so be sure to sign up for that. Curious to see what the prizes are going to be on that front. And, you know, if one of us wins it, all the more better, just because that will be one more thing that we can hang over Foul Play's head.
Right. I'm also going to be, so when I'm in DC this weekend, I'm going to be staying right next to the brand new gigantic MGM Grand Harbor down there in DC. I'm going to go over there and see if I can place a bet on it.
Nice.
Like, why not? And then I'll just give my ticket. I'll mail my ticket to Spider and be like, Spider, redeem this for me. He probably won't.
And then he'll take his cut.
Probably.
Yeah, all of that good stuff. So with that being said, guys, we are going to close out the show for tonight and the rest of the season. But, you know, we'll still have OWL Network going on. We'll still have Heroes Never Die, Mondays and Wednesdays, respectively. But, who knows what the future may hold. Maybe we'll find something new in the off-season. Because it's kind of weird, doing a seasonal podcast, because this is really our first seasonal one. So it's a little
It's
bit
our first
different.
foray into it.
So with that being said, again, if you guys are able to do so, be sure to send us reviews over on iTunes or your podcast and app of choice. If there's anything you'd like to see incorporated for the 2020 season of this podcast and also Fantasy Overwatch League, be sure to let us know. If you would like to find additional Overwatch related content.
No Ed is not an option.
Well, 1 star for Ed, 5 for Totem.
Yes.
As per the usual. But if you want to find additional Overwatch content, we do have Overwatch Recall, which is our podcast directory. So there you can find your Overwatch, Overwatch League, Path to Pro podcast, and also the 2 Fantasy OWL ones, which will be on hiatus at owlnshow.com/OWRecall. And then every Sunday and Monday, depending on obviously the weekend is, we do the episodic listens of all the prior week's shows. So all that is posted on our Twitter at OWRecall. Now, if you guys would like to support our network, you can do so a couple of different ways. Right now is September over on Twitch. There's half-off subs. You can also throw Twitch Prime subs our way, which are greatly appreciated. You could sub the normal way, which again is half off this month. We do also have Patreon, where we have tiers starting at just $1 a month, so you too could join the likes of our Master and Above patrons, Blaze and Bob, Brendan, JZ, Owl, and Kesha in helping our network grow. So for more info on all of that, be sure to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/OWL Network. Now, with that being said, guys, I do want to thank everyone who has been with us throughout this season on this podcast. I want to thank all of the hosts that we have had. Of course, Adenar is here, myself, Ramses, who decided not to hop on, apparently.
Oh, yeah, no. He's going to get some shit.
Yeah, he's going to get some. And, of course, Blaze and Bob. So thank you, everyone, for helping growing this podcast and expanding our network. It's been a blast, and, it's pretty clear, we were the last 2 standing, which is fitting since we were the top performers. But, Ed, why don't you go ahead and close out the show? Let them know how they can reach us now and in the future, and any parting words before we wrap up.
All right. So you can reach us through email at contact@owlnshow.com. We are on Twitter, and that's at OWL by the numbers. We do have a website, and the website is owlnshow.com, so go over there, check it out. We do have a YouTube channel, and that's youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. We are on Discord at discord.me/OWLNshow. And then we are streaming presently live on Twitch, like Totem had said. We are Twitch affiliates to help support the show by subscribing to our channel and earn our network emoticon. It is September, so make sure you go out there and give us those Amazon Primes. We do podcast and stream pretty regularly. We do podcast regularly, too. So Overwatch League Network airs Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific. OWL by the numbers normally airs Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, but this being our last episode.
Maybe something will happen on Tuesdays? We don't know.
Yeah, we may do every once in a while. Like, maybe once signings come out, we might do it, or building up, but, just keep an eye out for that. And then on Wednesdays, me and Totem do Heroes Never Die. That's Wednesdays, 5 p.m. Pacific. And then host streams, when available, run on a flex schedule, so be sure to follow us on Twitch to know when we are going live. And like you, Totem, also said, we do have the Patreon at patreon.com/OWL Network. So come over there if you want to help us grow even further or support us whatsoever, starting at just $1 a month. Now, this is not going to be my normal question. Something happened today, and I have thoughts.
There are a couple of things that happened today. I know what you're bringing up, but I have another thing that I have to gripe about after the fact.
So NBC announced its new streaming platform,
Peacock,
and they're going to be bringing back reboots of Battlestar Galactica and Punky Brewster.
Okay.
And they're going to be bringing back Saved by the Bell. Now, in this new Saved by the Bell, Zach Morris is the governor of California.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
I mean, it is always kind of a media circus, so, you know, it's plausible. It's plausible.
So Zach Morris is the governor of California. His wife is not Kelly Kapowski, because she's not on the show. Horseshit right there. They have AC Slater,
Mm-hmm.
and they have Jesse Spano. Those two are on it. They don't have Screech because he's a sexual predator. And and who's the other one? Laura Voorhees or whatever. I forgot her name. She's not in there either because she actually went batshit crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming they'll have Mr. Belding in there because he's old but not dead. I'm skeptical of all this because they tried this with Saved by the Bell, the college years, and it was not good.
I forgot about that. For
Right?
a good reason.
Like Saved by the Bell, the college years, where they had legit
Mm-hmm.
the best dorm room of all time. They had a co-ed dorm room with a giant living room that like shared living room between them.
Right.
The fuck? Name me one university out there that has co-ed shared rooms.
Mm-hmm.
No, just not happening. So I don't know how I feel about this. I'll still watch it though.
That being
Now,
said,
Totem,
you
want to bring up a rant.
Kesha actually already brought it up in Twitch chats. So, you know, the Sony Pictures CEO today was like, you know, we have some very famous people whose names are going to be kept under wrap that want to redo The Princess Bride. And literally, the entire internet is going, hold the fuck up. What? No, you're not doing it. Do something else. And here's the thing. I honestly don't have an issue with remakes. Like, I understand, you know, in some cases it does come off as a cheap way to make money or a cash grab. But there are some properties that you just leave be. Princess Bride is definitely towards the top of that list. Jaws would be another one.
Is there? Really? Because 3 Jaws was enough?
Well, I'm saying, like, I wouldn't want anyone to remake Jaws.
They've remade Jaws like 40 times just without the name Jaws. You can't even deny that.
Not all of them were the same sharks. Not all of them only had one shark. And not all of them utilized dynamite or punching sharks in the nose.
We're gonna need a bigger boat.
Yeah. But I will tell you this: the best thing to come from Jaws was definitely the Piranha remake.
Mm-hmm.
With the
There-
opening.
But I agree. There are certain movies you just do not remake, and usually it's these priceless comedies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Princess Bride is one that I don't think you can remake. Robin Hood Men in Tights, another one I don't think they can remake. The Naked Gun movies,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can redo. Because you can't regain the original charm of them. Because part of it is like, okay, this came out of left field. We didn't know what was happening, and it made it. People have tried. Look at Super Troopers. Super Troopers, the first one came out of nowhere. People loved it. Cult classic.
One of the most quotable movies.
Yep. Super Troopers 2 came out, and you're like, wah, wah.
Which was crowdfunded.
It was, and everyone wanted it, but then it was just like, oh, we should have let things be.
It was okay, but it wasn't anything near the level of the first one.
Yeah. Hangover. Nothing compares to the first Hangover.
Like they
It's
did
like
the same thing with like Dumb and Dumber when they did the sequel to that.
a Dumb and Dumber.
Years.
They did two.
Yeah.
Sorry, they did a prequel and a sequel
Mhm.
to that. So you can do these with action movies or dramas or stuff like that. You cannot pull this off with comedies, I don't think.
And for more random rants about movies, be sure to tune in Wednesdays for Heroes Never Die.
Yeah, because guarantee you,
maybe something else. Who knows? You never know.
maybe something else.
Who knows?
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't know, but with that being said, guys, I do want to thank everyone again. I have to go start my double movie stream as per usual on Tuesdays after our show, but thank you so much again for joining us tonight and every night on OWL by the numbers for this season. We will see you guys back in 2020 for more shenanery and more Ed and Totem dominance in fantasy OWLs. And
so I can actually say, see you next year.
Oh, God.
Yeah? Can I be that guy?
I mean, no. You just did, so...
Alright, fair enough.
I'll have to facepalm harder tomorrow. See you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.
See ya. Have a good one.